All right, let's look at some problems where we're asked to find a percent more than another number, which is the base number. We also have examples where we have a percent less than a base number, but let's focus on the more than first. So 75% more than my base number of 340. I like to think of it like this, okay? Our base number is the entire number. It's 100% of what we already have. So I'm actually going to write 100%. Okay, and more than means I'm increasing, right? I'm going to add. So I want 75% more than 100%. Well, what's that? That is 100 plus 75, which equals 175%. Okay, so I want 175% of this number. So I'm going to rewrite this. So 75% more than 340. Now that I know it's 75% plus 100, it's 175%. I'm actually being asked for 175% of 340. Okay, I did another video looking at this sentence. Percentage is a percent of a base number. And if you are familiar with this already, then you can go ahead and keep watching. But if you are not familiar and this doesn't make sense, then please go back and watch this video before you carry on with this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm looking to match up the numbers in my sentence here to the numbers up here in this sentence to see what is missing. And that will help me solve the problem. So I have 175% of 340. And if I look up here at this sentence, I have a percent of a base number, right? And base is what I had up here, so that makes sense. So the number that's missing is this percentage. So I have some formula here that I can use. Percentage equals my percent times my base. A shortcut to this is to know that the word of actually tells us to do multiplication, but if you don't know that, that's okay. Just use this formula, percent times the base. So this tells me to do 175% times 340. Okay, before I can use my percent, just like in the other video, I have to convert this to a decimal before I can start multiplying. So if you aren't familiar with that, please watch that video. It's a whole separate topic, but we're gonna spawn a decimal because there's not one there, and we're gonna go 2 places to the left because we're dividing by 100. So this turns into 1.75 times 340. Okay, I'm going to have to do a long multiplication problem for this. I'm going to stack it up. It does not matter what goes on the top or the bottom. Because this one is a 0, it will make it a little bit easier to put it on the bottom. So that's just personal preference. I'm going to write 1.75 times 340. 0 times everything is going to be 0. My next row, I'm going to put a leading 0. And now I multiply. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 4 times 7 is 28 plus 2 is 30. Carry the 3. 4 times 1 is 4 plus 3 is 7. Now I'm going to go down to the next row. I'm going to put 2 leading zeros. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. Let me cross those off there. 15. 3 times 7 is 21 plus 1 is 22. Carry the 2. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. So 0, 0, we're adding these together, 9 and 5. Now we're almost done. The last thing we need to do is count the decimal places in our numbers so we know where the decimals go here. So we're going to count till we get to the end. That's 2 places, okay? This one doesn't have any decimals, so I'm going to write 0, and I'm going to add them together. That tells me to move my decimal 2 places in my final answer. So we're going to spawn a decimal here at the end. 1, 2, so my final number is 595. Okay, let's make sure this makes sense in our original problem. So it tells me that 75% more than 340 is 595. If we put it in our original sentence like this, okay, it tells me that 595 is 175% of 340, and that makes sense because it's bigger than that number. Okay, let's look at the next example where we're asked to find less than. We're going to use a similar technique to over here. We have a percent less than the base number. The base number represents our whole number, which is 100% of the number. It's all there is, okay? And now we want 56% less than 100. Well, less than tells me I'm going to subtract. So I'm going to do 100 minus 56. 10 minus 6 is 4. So 44%. So this is the percent that I'm working with. So 56% less than 100% is going to be 44% of my number. So let's rewrite that. I want 44% of my base number, which is 245. Okay, now let's match this up to our sentence up here. Percentage is a percent of base. Which one is missing? Well, I've got a percent of, which we already know is the base number, and it looks a lot like this, right? Percent of the base. So that means the number that's missing is our percentage. So let's look down here. We're going to do the same thing as we did over here. Percentage is the percent times the base. So 175. Well, look at me just copying the other problem. Let's not do that. 44% times 245. Okay, before I can use this percent, I have to turn it into a decimal. So spawn a decimal at the end because there isn't already one. We're going to go 2 to the left. So that tells me my number is going to be 0.44 times 245. We're going to do some long multiplication. Again, it doesn't matter which one goes on the bottom or the top. I like to look for zeros or the one with fewer digits. This one only has 2 digits, so I'm going to put it at the bottom. So 245 times 0.44. 5 times 4 is 20. 4 times 4 is 16 plus 2, which is 8. Carry the 1. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 is 9. All right, I'm going to put a leading 0 here. Cross off those, I've used them. 4 times 5 is 20, 0, carry the 2. 4 times 4 is 16, times 2 is plus 2 is 18, carry the 1. And 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. All right, let's add 0, 8, 9 and 8 is 17, 0, 1. Now, the last part before we get our answer is to consider the decimal places in our number. So this is the only one with decimals. This doesn't have any. I'm going to write a 0. We're going to count how many decimal places till we get to the end. That's 2 jumps. So I'm going to do 2. I'm going to add these together. So 2 decimal places in total. So I'm going to spawn a decimal here at the end and go 2, 1, 2. So my final answer is 107.8. All right, and I'm going to put that back in with my original problem. So this tells me that 107.8 is 56% less than 245. And that makes sense because it should be less than 245, and that seems appropriate for the number that we're dealing with.